What you're about to watch is a history of nuclear energy. Not history in the conventional sense, but seen through the lens of politics, popular culture, movies, and the press. A story told as it was experienced by the people who were there. The story begins in 1942.
We entered the balcony at one end of the room. Across the room was a large cubical pile of graphite and uranium blocks in which we hoped the atomic chain reaction would develop. After a few preliminary tests, Fermi gave the order to withdraw the control rod another foot.
There was absolutely dead silence. Nobody said anything.
The Geiger counters registering the neutrons from the reactor began to click faster and faster. Throw in the safety rods, came Fermi's order. For the first time, atomic power had been released. It had been controlled and stopped.
I'm sure everyone was thinking immediately ahead to the bomb. From that minute on, we were in a war.
I remembered the line from the Hindu scripture, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds."
I could clearly see the city of Hiroshima within my bomb sight. I felt the bump of the airplane.
I realized the tragic significance of the atomic bomb. Its production and its use were not lightly undertaken by this government.
Now by shortwave from the Pacific.
Attention, the peoples of the world. World War II is about to come to its official closing. We have spent more than $2 billion on the greatest scientific gamble in history, and we have won.
Prairie Farmer WLS School Time presents The New World of Atomic Energy.
Can atomic energy be used right now as a source of industrial power? Dr. Novick, can you answer that?
Yes, Mr. Ward. In principle, yes. Widespread use of atomic power is still years away, but we're making a giant stride ahead.
David E. Lilienthal, Chairman of the United States Atomic Energy Commission.
Electricity produced from the heat of EBR-1 was used to light the reactor building.
From Groton, Connecticut, an address by Harry S. Truman, President of the United States.
We're assembled here to lay the keel of a Navy submarine, the USS Nautilus. This ship will be something new in the world. I pray that this ship, this first atomic submarine, will never have an enemy to fight. We had a bomb for war. Now we will have a working power plant for peace. This vessel is the forerunner of atomic-powered plants producing electricity for factories, farms, and homes.
This is the United Nations. President Eisenhower will address the delegates of 60 nations who have gathered here for this occasion.
It is not enough to take this weapon out of the hands of the soldiers. It must be put into the hands of those who will know how to strip its military casing and adapt it to the arts of peace.
Over 1,200 guests journeyed to Shippingport to see ground broken on this 400-acre site September 6, 1954.
This will move the marker on the scale and finally light the light, and the project will be started.
The President of the United States has just started off electronically the groundbreaking power shovel 1,400 miles away in Shippingport, Pennsylvania.
This, then, is a single atom, but certainly not all atoms are alike.
I want to know exactly what this "it" is.
A fantastic mutation, probably caused by lingering radiation from the first atomic bomb.
You hear that? Godzilla.
Analysis of radioactivity of the creature's footprint shows the existence of strontium-90, a product of the H-bomb.
When man entered the atomic age, he opened a door into a new world. What we'll eventually find in that new world, nobody can predict.
I will now use this neutron rod to generate fissions, which will start the reactor supplying electrical power at the plant. I wish I could say tonight that a lasting peace is in sight. Happily, I can say that war has been avoided.
Let the word go forth that the torch has been passed to a new generation of Americans. Our electric power needs will double in this decade, and the key to this century is power, and soon the vast resources of nuclear energy will be tapped. I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal before this decade is out of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the earth.
time to make real the promises of democracy. Now is the time to rise from the dark and desolate valley of segregation to the sunlit path of racial justice. Now is the time.
This government, as promised, has maintained the closest surveillance of the Soviet military buildup on the island of Cuba.
This is a real emergency. I repeat, this is a real emergency.
The measure before me, for the first time, it will allow private ownership in the United States of special nuclear materials, the materials used as fuels for nuclear plants.
The stage, the screen, and television often bring you stories of high adventure, fast-moving action, and powerful drama. Right now, I'd like to bring you a different kind of story. There's nothing mysterious about an atomic power plant. Basically, we're just using a new heat source, atomic fission. Atomic fuel has two advantages. It isn't consumed rapidly like other fuels, and it's very compact. For instance, the heat output of 1 pound of uranium can equal the heat output of 70 tons of coal. Today, we will attempt a controlled chain reaction. All eyes are on the control room. The control rods are lowered slowly. The nuclear reaction takes place. The atom has been put to work on schedule.
Tonight I want to speak to you of peace in Vietnam and Southeast Asia. I have lived daily and nightly with the cost of this war. Accordingly, I shall not seek and I will not accept the nomination of my party for another term as your president.
Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
This was Earth Day, and Republicans and Democrats, radicals and rightists, young and old, rich and poor, finally found a war all can support, a war on pollution.
I live, as you know, in California, and right next to us, within about a couple of miles, is one of the new nuclear power plants. If you're going to have a clean and beautiful environment in this country, we have to have a new source of energy. And the place to get it, one of the major places to get it, certainly, is through the development of nuclear energy.
By the mid-1960s, United States utilities were contracting for large commercial nuclear power plants.
There are 38 of them now in operation.
64 new ones are being built.
Producing about 5% of our electricity.
It's turning out 9% of our electricity.
72 nuclear plants account for 12.5% of electric production.
A slumping economy, rising unemployment, and expensive oil imports all were in today's gloomy economic news.
Our energy demands have begun to exceed available supplies. We are heading toward the most acute shortages of energy since World War II.
I am a firm advocate of many, many more nuclear power plants in the United States. Some 200 additional nuclear power plants all over the United States in order to free us from the oil cartels in the Middle East.
In order to make certain that power plants built in the future are safe, are reliable, I have recommended substantial additional funds.
It's like asking the Hells Angels to control their speed limits on the highways.
It's easy to be pessimistic about our energy future, but Amory and Hunter Lovins believe that there's actually reason for optimism.
Pollster Lou Harris has presented the findings of a new national survey of attitudes about nuclear power.
Harris concluded that by a 66 to 22% margin, the American public supports the building of more nuclear power plants.
Professor Norman Rasmussen will speak in favor of nuclear energy. Ralph Nader, consumer advocate, will oppose Dr. Rasmussen.
I'd like now to sign into law Senate Bill 826, which establishes the new Department of Energy.
The American nuclear power program is in trouble because the cost of building the plants has gone crazy.
We developed a regulatory system that allowed any person to make any accusation.
Because it's necessary, there's definitely going to be atomic power. The only real question then becomes whether our own safeguards are good enough to protect us against our own technology.
It's called the China Syndrome. It has nothing to do with China.
No, nothing at all.
It's a thriller. It's with Jack Lemmon and myself and Michael Douglas. And it's, to me, a perfect movie.
This is Kimberly Wells. I'm speaking to you from the inside of the control room of the Ventana Nuclear Power Plant.
Monday last, at 3:36 p.m., we had an accident.
The world has never known a day quite like today. It faced the considerable uncertainties and dangers of the worst nuclear power plant accident of the atomic age.
The situation is more complex than the company first led us to believe.
Early this afternoon, President Carter went on site at the 3 Mile Island nuclear power plant in Pennsylvania.
But in the matter of the 3 Mile Island accident, the waves of confusion reached tidal proportions.
During the news conference, President Carter urged local residents to remain calm.
A movement already has begun on Capitol Hill for a congressional investigation of the Harrisburg incident.
The situation is still stable and slowly improving.
The safety systems were called on to function. They functioned as designed. They did provide water to the core.
At the time of the accident, I felt that the operators were confident enough to deal with accident conditions. I now know, in hindsight, they weren't as prepared as they should have been.
The nuclear industry set up an independent watchdog, INPO, the Institute of Nuclear Power Operations.
And its mission was to set standards of excellence that every plant in the United States would meet. And one of the top goals that INPO set when they first started was to improve the level of training.
The battle over nuclear power and its future continues in this country.
This administration is committed to the use of nuclear energy as a crucial element in the enormous task of supplying America's energy needs.
President Reagan's energy budget calls for substantial increases in support for nuclear power.
The bottom line is, nuclear involves radioactive material, and it doesn't go away. It does go away, Tom. That's one of the things that I think people misunderstand. Of the toxic substances we have, nuclear is the one that does go away.
The Nuclear Waste Policy Act of 1982, which I'm signing today, provides the long overdue assurance that we now have a safe and effective solution to the nuclear waste problem.
There are 431 nuclear power reactors operating around the world. They do provide important energy in the 25 nations where they are running. A nuclear accident anywhere hurts us all.
Russians are the only country in the world that relies on operators to guarantee safety.
There has been measurable progress in the nuclear power plant safety worldwide.
Today, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission issued a low-power operating license for the Perry 1 nuclear plant in Ohio, bringing the total number of commercial nuclear power plants in the United States to 100. But in Washington, Secretary of Energy John Harrington said that 100 plants may not be enough for the future.
There are no new orders for nuclear reactors in this country today, and that's very troubling if you're worried about the future of this country.
The Environmental Protection Agency today released a report warning that the burning of fossil fuels is causing the climate of the Earth to warm up faster than expected. The EPA said this so-called greenhouse effect will begin to change global weather, agriculture, and economies as early as the 1990s.
By converting to electrical processes which operate more efficiently, we can go a long way towards solving the CO2 problem. Much of the electricity, for example, is generated from uranium, in other words, nuclear power. And of course, that doesn't have any CO2 emission at all.
Our electricity use keeps rising as our economy grows. Nationwide, electricity demand has gone up almost 50% over the last 15 years.
Now in the 1980s, conditions flipped over and were different from the 1970s. That is, a lot less building of new power plants, but on the other hand, much higher electricity demand growth than had been anticipated.
Do you know what today is?
What, Valentine's Day? Your birthday?
No, it's Earth Day.
America in 1990 is more environmentally conscious than it has been in 2 decades.
We had a bomb for war. Now we will have a working power plant for peace.
Happily, I can say that war has been avoided.
And the key to this century is power. And soon the vast resources of nuclear energy will be tapped.
We want to build an energy future that's based on a range of diverse sources.
A generation raised in the shadows of the Cold War assumes new responsibilities in a world warmed by the sunshine of freedom.
Big wars are against poverty and against environmental destruction and are fought not with weapons but with science and technology, including nuclear science and technology.
Highly enriched uranium from former Soviet weapons, once targeted on our cities, will be diluted and used to light and heat those same cities.
Men had the boundless energy of atomic fission under control.